What's up guys, Chris Schwartz-Edmisten here from Schwartz-Edmisten Web Design. In today's video, we're going to create this cool image reveal effect. It's an effect that I did for a client. They hired me to do this effect on their Squarespace website, and I thought it turned out really cool. So I wanted to go over kind of the fundamentals of how I approached this effect. This of course is not the final design, but it's sort of a recreation of what I did for them. So if you want to learn how to create a cool, engaging reveal effect like this, then stick around. So I want to start out by going over how position sticky works because it's a really cool property, but I want to have the foundations down before we jump into Squarespace. So for my setup here, I have three sections. I have this first red section. I have another section here down below, and it's this sticky container element. It has this kind of yellowish background and it's 400 pixels tall. Inside of that container, we have this green element here, this sticky element. And for the sticky element, I've given it a width and height of 200 pixels, given it a green background, I've centered it, and then I've given it a display of flex and just made sure that the title was centered within the green box. So this kind of general styling isn't really that important, but I just didn't want you guys to be too confused. And then for the last section here, this is the element with the next section class. I've just given it this kind of gray background and I've made it really tall so we can scroll down really far. So going back to the setup here, so for this first section, we have a height of 200 pixels. And then for our sticky container, we have a height of 400 pixels. And you'll notice the sticky element is half as tall as the section it's in. And when we have an element that has a parent that is taller than it, we can apply a position of sticky to the child. So let me go ahead and toggle on that position sticky. And then we have to tell it where we want it to stick to. In this case, we want it to stick to the top of the window. So here, as I scroll down the page, you'll see it sticks to the top of the window until it reaches the bottom of its parent. So again, the parent is twice as tall, so it sticks until it reaches the bottom of the parent. Now, the values that I've used are intentional. So we have a height of 200 pixels. We have a sticky element height of 200 pixels, and our container is 400 pixels. So it's twice as tall as the container above it. So because our sticky element is half as tall as our sticky container, we essentially have 200 pixels of just dead scroll space, which happens to be the exact height of our first section, 200 pixels. So if we move up this second section by the height of the first section, 200 pixels, it'll look as though this box is getting revealed by the red section. So let me go ahead and toggle on that margin top of negative 200 pixels. So you can see our sticky section has jumped up underneath. And now as we scroll up the page, because we had those 200 pixels of dead scroll space where now the box is fixed to the top, we have that effect where it looks like the red section is revealing the content beneath it, and then it gets scrolled up the page. So this effect it doesn't really work at this scale because you can see the bottom of the next section coming up. But what we're going to do is we're going to use 100 viewport height units so that this effect takes up the full height of the viewport. And so you won't be able to see the next section coming into frame like that. So if I go ahead and convert all of this to viewport height units, so I'm going to use 100 VH. Our sticky container is going to be twice as tall as that. So this will be 200 VH. Our margin top here is going to be the same as the height of the first section, 100 viewport height units. And the height of this element is going to be 100 viewport height units. So we want the sticky element to be half as tall as the sticky container. And for the width, we'll just give it a full width of 100% so that it spans the full width of the screen. Okay, so now as I scroll down, you'll see it still looks like the next section is being revealed by the first section, but you can no longer see the yellow bottom of the parent container coming to like sweep up the green section. So the reveal totally stands true. Like it totally looks like this first section is just revealing the green section. And then as soon as the red section reaches the top of the window, the content scrolls up the page. So a really cool effect here. And I just wanted to go over how it operates first so that it'll make more sense what we're going for when we jump into Squarespace. So now that we've gone over the CodePen example, I'm here in Squarespace and we can start doing our Squarespace site implementation of this effect. So here in the custom CSS window, all I've done is I've set up this body not SQS edit mode active selector. And basically we don't want any CSS that we write to apply when the site is actively being edited. We just want it to go back to normal exactly like this. So that's why I'm including this body not SQS edit mode active selector. So if you right click on the website and you go to the body of the page, which all the website content is housed in the body, when you click edit, a class gets added to it of SQS edit mode active. You can see that here. So basically what that selector does is it targets the body. And since all of our website content is inside of the body, any CSS that we write for elements inside of this tag is only going to apply when the body does not have this class on it. So that just ensures that as soon as someone clicks edit, none of our CSS that we're writing is going to apply. So with that out of the way, we can go ahead and start targeting our first section. So this is a PNG background image that I've uploaded. And a couple housekeeping things. Remember, we want this first section to be 100 viewport height. And the way that you can do that is by changing the section height to large. And since we have a background image, we don't want any overlay opacity. So make sure the overlay opacity is set to 0. And then in the section after that, I've already set it up. I have my title and my button blocks already set up in this next section. So the first section is going to be your image that is going to be doing the reveal, and the next section is going to be your sticky element and sticky container essentially. Okay, so I want to target this first section, and to make my CSS more specific than Squarespace's CSS, I'm going to first add this site wrapper ID here. So all of the content for the website is inside of this site wrapper. So I'm going to target that site wrapper, and we target IDs with a hashtag. And now I can target this first section on the page. I'm going to use my Chrome extension, the block identifier plugin, makes that very simple. And I'll paste in my section ID, making sure that there's a space in between this element and this element, since my section is inside of the site wrapper. And the site wrapper is inside of this body element. So the first thing that we want to do for this section is we want to make its background transparent because sections, even when they have background images, if I go to this first section on the page, it gets a background of white. So I need to target this page section and give it a background of transparent. Whoops, this should be background : transparent. And then the next thing I want to do is the section background color comes from this section background element, and it gets a color as well. So right now it has a background color of white. So we also want to target this section background selector and make that element's background also transparent. So I'm going to open up some curly brackets and copy and paste that background transparent there. So now that everything is set to transparent on that section, when we put this section underneath it, it should look like it's just the image overlaying all this content, and we'll be able to see that content underneath. So the next thing that we want to do, we want to go ahead and target the next section on the page. So the way that we can do that is inside of this first section's curly brackets. So when you click on an opening curly bracket, it highlights the closing one. So I know I want to be inside that closing curly bracket, and I'm going to write ampersand plus section. And what this is the less shorthand for basically we're saying target the next section that comes immediately after this section here. So since this is the immediate following section to this section, we're now targeting elements inside of this section. So for the first thing that I want to do for this section is go ahead and give it a height of 200 viewport height units. So this is like my sticky container. So we're going to give it a height of 200 viewport height. I'm going to make this min height. So it can get taller than that, but it can't be any shorter than 200 viewport height units. So you can see right now the content is directly in the middle, and we actually want the content to be at the very top of this section. So what I'm going to do next is go ahead and give it an align items of flex start. Instead of having that centered, we want this to be at the top of the element, because remember, we want it to stick to the very top, and then once it reaches the bottom, we then want it to scroll up, but we don't want it to start in the middle or it's not going to turn out properly. So after that, we can now target our sticky element, which is going to be our content wrapper. So in this section, we've now made this section 200 viewport height units, and our element that's going to be our sticky element is this content wrapper class. Because this is a direct child of this section, we can target this element, and all we have to do is get rid of the padding, and then we're going to make our sticky element 100 viewport height units. So I'm going to copy this content wrapper class, and inside of those the and plus section curly brackets, I'm going to target that class. We're going to give it a minimum height of 100 viewport height units, and we're going to get rid of the padding on the top and the padding on the bottom. Okay, so now you can see the element jumps right to the top, and this content wrapper has a minimum height of 100 viewport height units. Perfect. So the next thing that we want to do now is we want to center this content within this content wrapper class, because you can see the class is 100 viewport height units, but now our content is at the very top. So even though our container is going to be truly sticky, we wouldn't be able to see our content if it wasn't centered. So I'm going to target this SQS grid 12 class. So I'll just copy that there. And right below the content wrapper, we'll target the class. Make sure my period is right next to the class name. And now for this, we're going to go ahead and give it a display of flex. We'll give it a flex direction of column. That way, everything is stacked in a column as opposed to stacking elements in a row. Next, we're going to give it a height of 100%, so it fills up that full 100 viewport height space of its parent. And then we're going to align items to the center and justify content to the center. Align items, center, justify content, center. Cool, so now we have our 100 viewport height unit element, and our content is perfectly centered in that 100 viewport height element. So all we have to do now, let's see, is give our content wrapper a position of sticky. And we want to tell it to stick to the top of its container. So now as we scroll down the page, it's going to stick to the top, and we have 100 viewport height units of this kind of dead scroll space here, and then it scrolls back down the page, which is perfect. So all we have to do is move up this second section 100 viewport height units. So we'll give it a margin top of negative 100 viewport height units, which is the height of the first section. And now you can see it starts at the top of the page, and it's basically nothing happens for 100% of the viewport height, and then it starts scrolling again. So we just need to make this first section appear on top. So I'm going to give it a z index of anything higher than 1. So I'll give it a z index of 2. And now that first section appears on top. And since we made the background and the section background color is transparent, we can see the content underneath. So now as I scroll down the page, we get this great reveal effect. And as soon as the bottom of this first section reaches the top of the window, it pulls up the page and we get our normal scroll. And I quickly want to go over what the effect looks like on mobile. Still the same great effect. Because we're using those viewport height units, it's completely responsive and we still get the same cool reveal on mobile. All right, guys, that's it for me. Hopefully I did a good enough explanation to make this make sense. It's a really cool effect. If you want to learn more about custom CSS in Squarespace, I have a free video course that you can do. It's an email course. It's a 4-day email course. So you get a new email every day with a new lesson. And it goes over the basics of CSS and implementing CSS in Squarespace. So I'll have a little video card here somewhere where you can check out that if you want to sign up for that. All right, that was it for this video. If you liked this video and you like doing cool effects like this in Squarespace, consider subscribing to the channel, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.